Tiffany House was hoping to be here tonight to present the award to you, Henri. Unfortunately, she's under the weather and was unable to travel, but she sent a letter which I'd like to read to you. And Nicole had asked me to step in, and of course, as you all know, no one can say no to Nicole. So I'm very honored to be here. My name is Tiffany House. I am the president of the Acid Maltase Deficiency Association and vice chair of the International Pompe Association. I am also a Pompe patient. I was diagnosed with Pompe disease in 1995 when I was 12 years old. My diagnosis came after years of searching for answers for my slowly failing health. It also came with a grim fate, at least according to the doctor that diagnosed me. When I was diagnosed, we were told that I would be lucky to live to be 20. We were also told that there was no treatment available for Pompe and that there was no research being done at the time to develop one. Thankfully, that doctor was wrong. As we were soon to learn, after a lot of research by my parents, there were several teams of dedicated doctors and researchers who were tirelessly working on developing a treatment for Pompe. These teams included the group from Erasmus University in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, the group from Duke University, and researchers at the National Institutes of Health and New York University Medical Center, just to name a few. The group of people dedicated to finding a treatment for Pompe disease would also soon include companies like Genzyme Corporation. Over the last 17 years, there have been many twists and turns in the Pompe story. But along the way, one thing has remained constant and consistent: Genzyme's commitment to the Pompe community. That commitment started at the top of the organization with Henri Termeer. Under Henri's leadership, Genzyme never faltered in its goal of bringing treatment to market for Pompe disease. Even in the face of obstacles, Henri was resolute in his belief that a treatment must be developed and made available to patients around the world. On the days when it looked like a treatment would never be a reality, I was repeatedly reassured that Henri's commitment to the Pompe community remained strong, and that under his leadership, they would persevere until they succeeded. And it was true. They did not stop until that treatment was approved, and they continue to work today to bring it to new markets around the world. Henri's leadership at Genzyme has also been pivotal for the Pompe community for another reason. In the past, my fellow Pompe advocate, Kevin O'Donnell, has talked about the Pompe model. What he focuses on is the unique relationship between academia, patients, and industry that exists with Pompe disease. He has a very eloquent description of it, but in the interest of time, the main point is that with Pompe disease, something new has happened. All three stakeholders work together for the good of the Pompe community. This is the Pompe model that other disease groups are trying to create with their own communities. It was not always this way. It took a strong patient community with the backing of industry and academia to make it happen. In terms of industry, it was under Henri's leadership that Genzyme recognized and acknowledged the unique and invaluable perspective that patients possess and welcomed us into the process. Without Henri's support, the Pompe model would look very different, and we would be much less effective in advocating for the best interests of our community. It is when we all work together toward a shared goal that we are the most effective. So I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you to Henri. Thank you for fostering a sense of cooperation and community within Genzyme, and thank you for your unfailing dedication to the Pompe community. I think Tiffany summed it up perfectly. Henri, you have provided hope and treatments to thousands of patients. including myself. I'm currently, hopefully, awaiting the approval of Lemtrada, a new treatment for multiple sclerosis that is sitting at the FDA. And I would like to add my thanks to Tiffany's. Henri, you were a visionary in creating the orphan disease industry. I remember in the early years introducing myself at pharma conferences, and pharma executives more often than not would say, Genzyme, you're that crazy company focused on orphan drugs. And they were skeptical, thinking the business model impossible. Today, it's hard to find a global pharma that isn't having a focus on rare diseases or a rare disease division, and there's numerous biotechs focusing on that segment. It wasn't always easy, but when the going got tough, I remember, Henri, you would say, if Genzyme has technology that might be helpful to patients, then we have an obligation to find a way to pursue it. With your leadership and unwavering dedication, Genzyme created new business models, new funding vehicles, new regulatory approval pathways, and new reimbursement processes to enable development of treatments for rare diseases. There are countless patients that have benefited from Henri's leadership, but he has had far broader impact than solely the treatments developed by Genzyme. Henri brought together teams of bright, passionate, entrepreneurial people with diverse skills. Doctors, researchers, business executives, even ex-military officers, and inspired and motivated us to stretch our collective limits to help patients. He gave us the freedom to be creative. I will always be indebted to him for giving me a start in the industry, even though I had no prior experience in biotech. He was a terrific mentor, teaching us by example to put patients first, to get involved in advocacy and affect change, and to give back to the industry. And in that process, we created strong bonds and friendships that will last a lifetime. Once at a Genzyme alumni reception, I commented to Henri that the group felt like family. But he shook his head and said, no, we are family. That was the culture that Henri created. Today, Genzyme alumni include an impressive array of biotechnology executives, nonprofit leaders, venture capitalists, philanthropists, and entrepreneurs developing the next generation of innovative treatments. Henri has been instrumental in building not just Genzyme, but the biotech industry at large. Thank you, Henri, for being a visionary in creating the orphan disease industry, for raising the awareness of rare diseases, for training, mentoring, and instilling corporate responsibility in a generation of life science leaders, and most of all, for giving hope and improved quality of life to countless patients. It is my honor and privilege to present the first Rare Lifetime Achievement Award to my dear friend, Mr. Henri Termeer.
Thank you, Gail, and thank you, Tiffany, for these very nice comments. And of course, when such nice comments are being made about you, then you start to think, what's all that about? Who are they talking about? I know better. It is, of course, an experience like this comes about with enormous humility and with enormous discounting, because almost nothing works in what we do. we try. And many people try to do all kinds of things with great dedication over many years, and it doesn't work. But I guess tonight, and also in my experience, we found that we can do things. We can change the world. We can move things forward. And that is the most valuable experience that after I left Genzyme, after the acquisition by Sanofi, I took away. We were actually able to do a few things that really were important. And why was that? There's no simple explanation for it, other than what we heard tonight: the commitment, the focus, the dedication, the persistence, the not giving up, then doing it this way and doing it that way, and to listening. I was struck by John's comments. You know, John, you've done amazing things too. Using the experiences that you had, not because you were dealing with a problem of the patients in your family, but because you knew there were ways to make a difference. And that is driving this industry. That's driving us. That's driving RARE. That's why RARE is such an exceptionally fine organization that brings together people that have a sense that if they focus, they can make a very important difference. There were indeed years, in the early years of Genzyme, that most people advised me to see a doctor. You know, it probably wouldn't work. And most people thought that it was probably a waste of resources. But then we had that first patient, Brian, that was shown in the movie where it worked, and that changed everything, particularly for us that were close to it. We then started to believe we can do this, and we could do that more often than not. And today, I think we have arrived at the moment where that's different. There are not as many skeptics today. In fact, today, working on rare diseases and finding solutions for rare diseases is something that people can relate to. It is an important area of investment. It is an important area of concentration for researchers and for physicians and for hospitals and for companies and for entrepreneurs and for venture capitalists. And we find that regulators. I was struck, you probably picked up a few days ago, the White House Advisory Council for Science and Technology announced that they would like to double the number of products that would be approved by the FDA from the rate at which they are today, which is about 2030 in that rate. And that they particularly would pay attention to diseases that could be treated very specifically. Rare diseases, personalized medicine, cases where we can combine a diagnosis with a therapy and have a therapeutic index that's very important, maybe more important than what can be achieved by many other therapies. It's a great ambition. We see an enormous movement in this direction. And the movement comes in the first place because science and technology, the work of Dr. Neufeld and others, that work is teaching us, and the products that now are successfully in the market is teaching us that we can make a difference for the other 6,800 rare diseases and the many more rare diseases that actually we will discover as time goes forward. We will, of course, have enormous resource issues as this moves forward. And we need to think that through. And I can't solve that in 2 minutes here, other than to say it is worthwhile to solve. And we will have to solve it. Because indeed it is true that if we can treat a patient, a child, or an adult, and particularly a young person, we will do it. We will not say we can't afford to do it. We will not say we have to do something else that's more important. If we know how to treat a patient, we will choose to do that. That's civilization. That's in us. That's what we do in this country. And I found that to be true in many countries throughout the world. This feeling, this notion, that if you can treat a child or a patient, to say, I will do it, is quite universal. There are numerous things we do in healthcare where we don't know what difference it makes. And I don't want to be skeptical or cynical about that, but it is true. We will learn, and this is maybe the most important task that we have in the rare disease area, is we will have to figure out a way to allow society to become familiar with the contributions that we make to the therapies for these patients. This is a communication issue. That's why this evening, this grouping, this work by Nicole that started only a few years ago is so very important. It will make enormous difference. We need to communicate in many different fora the prioritization, the deployment of resources, the importance of deployment of resources in the direction of this field. Because we have now the tools, and increasingly we'll have more tools to make a very important difference for these patients. It has moved from something we do because we want to try and find something, an opportunity. It has moved now to a responsibility. We can make that difference. And it needs to be prioritized in society so that difference actually can be, society can benefit from that difference. We are the pioneers, and I am enormously grateful for the organizers here tonight, Nicole in the first place, but also for all the people that are not here but have similar feelings, come together in other meetings that are now starting to stand up, and for all the companies and the people, the risk takers, the venture capitalists that are starting to put money into this space. We're going to have a very, very tough moment with the NIH budget clearly being under significant pressure as part of the whole economic adjustments that need to take place. We need to make sure that we find a way for the NIH to prioritize work in this space in a way that really allows it to continue because it is worthwhile. It's not because it is our field, but it is worthwhile for society. So again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this honor. Of course, numerous people really deserve the honor alongside with me. This was an enormous experience over the years, and it is a continuing experience, clearly slightly different format, but a continuing experience that now has broadened through many other organizations as well. Thank you very much.